Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Chris Ferguson, who is an author, speaker, spiritual healer, and a master life coach. Chris, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
So you've got a lot of things that you focus on, and obviously each and every one of these is serving and giving value to people that you work with. But before we get into what you do and how you do it, give me a little bit of a background on yourself, and then what led you into getting certified as a master life coach and spiritual healer.
Well, when I was 4 years old, I was hungry, and I woke up, and I'm that kid that I think that they made the cabinet locks for, because I got underneath the kitchen cabinet and I drank some toxic pink liquid, and it turned out back in my day it was liquid Drano.
Oh no.
And I ended up flatlining because it was so toxic to my body. I'm only 4. I probably weighed 30 pounds. And so I flatlined, and I had a near-death experience. And at that point, after the near-death experience, I started having friends show up. You know how kids talk about their imaginary friends? Mm-hmm. I had a whole clan of them show up. There was all these people around me, and they helped me hide when I was in danger. They helped me figure out how to do things and kind of avoid trouble. But at the same time, some of them were scary. And that led me into the intuitive, the channeling, the healer part, because as I grew, I had multiple incidents where at 8, my parents got divorced, and in the 60s, it wasn't common. My mother was told by the Catholic Church, women do not work. We'll help you out. And I ended up growing up at the Myron Stratton home in Colorado Springs. I turned 8 in February. I had my first Holy Communion in May. And in June, I'm being dumped off, and they're telling the matron, watch these kids. They're heathens like their father, because my dad's Native American. And left. I tried to chase her down, and I remember running so hard, I literally ran out of my shoes to catch her. And that moment, she accelerated the car, and I lost every ounce of hope in life.
Wow.
I learned hate. I learned loss of love. I learned how to just go inward. I was like an armadillo, and I just rolled up, and I became non-auditorial. So while at the home, I was being bullied because I was non-auditorial. The matrons were extremely abusive, and there was a lot of traumas that happened. But at 13, 2 girls tried to kill me. In the middle of the night, they poured powder in my face. And you know, talcum powder is like cinnamon, and when it gets wet, it clumps. Well, I snore. My mouth was open, so I had powder in my nose, in my mouth, in my ears. And when I couldn't breathe, I tried to get up, and they're holding me down. And I just simply said, Creator, either take me now and let me have some peace, or give me the strength to fight back. And I fought back. So at 15, I ran away from the orphanage, and I was living on the streets. And in Colorado Springs, as we know, it gets cold. And I was out on the streets for 1.5 years, and this was in the 70s, so it was really a tumultuous time. They didn't have foster care. They had juvenile delinquency, but they didn't really have anything other than juvenile delinquents back in that day. And so kids could go missing and nobody cared. So I ran into my mother panhandling one day, and she had had another child. And she needed a babysitter, and I needed a roof, so I agreed to it. So I went through a lot of trouble there. At one point, I took 32 phenobarbital because she kept kicking me out of the house and calling the police, telling them I ran away. So finally, this one cop listened to me, and we went back and proved that she was filing false police reports to try to prove that I was unstable and put me in like a mental institution, and it backfired. But that's the way my life has worked since I had that near-death experience. It seems to work out for me. Yes, there is trials and tribulations, but it always seems to work out. So at 18, I left home. 22, I had cancer, uterus cancer. Thank God I had a child already before this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wanted 6 kids, and the creator knew, no. She'll be a serial killer mom or something, so let's not have her do that. Because I wanted to show 6 kids they could be loved unconditionally, no matter what. So I got married. My husband and I have been married 35 years now. And I got into law enforcement in 1980. I was a dispatcher. I progressed up and became a correctional officer at a men's prison. Then I went to South Florida and I worked in the corporate security. I don't know if you've heard of the Mills Corporation, but Sawgrass Mills is one of the second largest attractions in the state of Florida, and it's a mall, and it's 1.5 miles long, and they have all the outlines. But the Panthers, the hockey team, play right across the street, so it's this big conglomerate of a building. And I was the assistant security director there at that mall. And while I was there, I decided, we had kids and gangs coming into the mall, and they would just come in a group and just ransack it. So I got with some people on the Juvenile Delinquency Gang Prevention Council, became a board member, and then I started investigating some of the crimes because of my law enforcement background, especially in corrections. And I found out that the state of Florida didn't have truancy. There wasn't a crime. Nobody cared about the kids, and I said, we got to stop this. So I talked to the Juvenile Delinquency Gang Prevention Council, and they got attorneys involved in it. I started working with politicians and law enforcement, the school district, mental health, DCF, all these agencies to help children. And I was trying to pay it forward because of where I came from. I had been ashamed all my life of being one of those kids, and this was my way of helping. So I started working with a multi-agency gang task force in Miami-Dade and Broward County. And we built a facility it's called the Juvenile Intake Facility, but it was to help kids, because if kids go truant, they don't do it by themselves. They take a friend with them, and then by not being supervised, they get in trouble. So we built a facility. 2.5 years later, it came into fruition. And they wanted me to be the director, but I didn't have a college degree yet. I only had my associates at that time, so I couldn't do it. So I left the Juvenile Delinquency Council, and I went to a alternative high school in Coconut Creek. And it was 78% black, 10% Hispanic, 8% Oriental, and 1% white. And I loved that job. I was there for 15 years. There was 3,000 students, and we dealt with all kinds of gang issues. It wasn't a community school, but I could help these kids who were also punting in their life, to give them support, to give them advice, to point them in the right direction. I helped 5 homeless kids graduate by just doing a simple act of getting the guidance office to put them in first period gym. I would wash their clothes that the football team would use, and then this way every day they had clean clothes. It might be the same clothes, but it was the same clothes. It was clean clothes. So I left there, and by paying it forward, it's always been about paying it forward for kids. And the last 5 years, I've been empowering women, because I know in all the jobs that I did, they were all men-oriented jobs, as far as the correctional, as far as corporate security, as far as a security specialist at a high school. So much so, having so much law enforcement behind me, I wanted to be a police officer when I was younger. So at the age of 60, I went to the Tennessee Law Enforcement Academy and graduated as a law enforcement officer here in Tennessee. And one of the things that has always helped me is that I have no fear. I don't understand the word no. If I set my mind to it, I do it. No ands, ifs, or buts, no fears, just step out in it, do the best. Being done is better than being perfect.
Yeah. Because you can always improve from there. So that's first of all, when you're describing that, the word that comes to mind is perseverance, is persistence. And you had something, like that inner drive, that burning desire, like Napoleon Hill teaches in his book, Think and Grow Rich, that burning desire to succeed and make it through and persist and persevere and all of those things, because like a lot of times people go, oh, well, you're just so lucky, or things just work out for you. Or like you said, things just always seem to work out. Well, they seem to work out because you had the desire to want them and make them work out. If you just sat back and said, life's horrible, give me the remote control, and I'm just going to be the paper boat on the sea of life, then nothing would have worked out that way. You had to shift your mindset, and you could have taken the victim mentality, but yet you overcame that, and you turned that into, like you mentioned with, I'm helping this group of people and I'm impacting these lives. And that's, working in with kids and law enforcement. And that's an amazing story, number one. And number two, an amazing springboard into now serving and giving value to others in your life coaching.
Yes. I actually speak it this way. You can stay in victimhood, or you can become your oppressor, or you can climb to the top of that pyramid and become your own hero. I had a student here a couple of weeks ago ask me at school and said, Miss Chris, who's your famous or your most favorite superstar? And I said, myself. I am my superhero. And when you become your superhero, you can do anything. You don't have fears. You don't have apprehensions. You allow love to be your guide. And one of the biggest things I had to do was I don't want to say forgive myself, but forgive everything that I went through, because I had no control over it. But the minute I had control at 18, if I thought, and this was my guide at the time, if I thought my parents would go straight, I would take a left, or I would take a right, because whatever they did was a disaster. So I didn't want a disaster in my life. So I would take a left or a right. And that's how it served me, by picking different options and striving forward. But out of all the kids, I'm one of, 2 of us out of the 7 has a college degree. So it is about personal choices.
Yep, for sure. So let's talk about your first book, Leave My Bubbles Alone. What was the inspiration there, and what is it about? The title definitely intrigues me.
It's about bullying. And working with kids for 29 years now, the first that kids experience bullying is in the family. It's cousins, it's nephews, it's brothers, it's sisters. And when you go to school, and I saw this, and this is what inspired me to write the book, was that I would see a kid that was related to another kid, and his friends would bully this little boy, and his cousin wouldn't do anything to stop it. So now these kids feel, oh, he's free game. His older cousin isn't going to stop us. We can keep it going. And then that's how other people think that, oh, he's free game. Let's go and bully him or her even more. So in that book was to show that bullying's not okay, and it's very, very important to speak out and to speak up.
I would say, and we could spend about 4 more hours on just that one topic right there, of course, but I would say that a kid might feel like, well, I don't want to speak up because that means, I'm weak. It's going to show my weakness. And in reality, it may be said that your strength is shown when you speak up, because you're taking a stand, and that's taking a stand for yourself, but most importantly, making an example and taking a stand for all the other peers in your group that might be experiencing the same thing. That inspires them as well.
I agree. Absolutely. But the one thing I also did was also call the parents and say, hey, listen, Johnny's being bullied, and his brother, Henry, is allowing it at school instead of stopping it, and let the parents address it too. So this gets it at home as much as it is at school. And I teach this to parents all the time and have for years. Your child is not the same child you have in your house. When they get around their friends, they become a different individual. They're totally unique to themselves and their friends, and they do silly stuff and stupid stuff.
Yes. So
when parents go, not my child, oh, yes, I'm sorry, it is. Let me show you the video.
Well, I think that you've picked some platforms that are so powerful, because when you can, help people to see what's inside that needs to come outside, and to guide them on the next step down the road, because sometimes they're too close to the forest to see the trees. And also from your experiences, you're not just someone that, grew up on a trust fund and went to this cool college and now knows the book learning about psychology and I can help you. You've been in the trenches and learned from life experiences. And I think that really lends itself to being relatable. And I know that you even hinted at it with, the kids just coming up and just really resonate with you. So when you're working with someone to help them on your life coaching as a master life coach, but I just think that just exudes through in the work that you do with them.
I agree, but as a master life coach, a lot of people hang on to those traumas and those incidences that happen in their life instead of understanding that if you're under 18, you legally cannot be held responsible unless you've done some heinous crime as an adult. So really, your parents are responsible for you, and everything that happens in your life, you have no control over. And a lot of kids who were harmed, and it's really, really unfortunate, a lot of kids who are harmed carry that trauma in their life, and they stay down in that corner of victimhood because nobody's ever shown them how to step out of that and understand that there's certain things you can't control. And if you can't control them, why are you allowing it to define you?
Yeah. That's you've mentioned a couple times about control, and I know that in personal development it just really is just something really powerful when someone realizes it's not your fault or things like that. But we really need to realize that we should not allow ourselves to get all bunched up, for lack of a better term, but all frustrated about things we can't control. Like right before we started, our interview here, I was telling you that here in Colorado, we had 2 feet of snow this week. Well, if I didn't like snow or didn't like 2 feet of snow and got all upset about that, that's doing no good. I can't control that. It's coming out of the sky and here it is. So I think the sooner that people can realize, okay, I'm getting a little upset about this thing right here, this event or this situation. Let me just assess. Can I do anything to impact this, positive or negative? If it's yes, okay, then do it. If it's no, move on, because it's doing nobody any good.
I agree. Some of my current clients, some of theirs is when they beat themselves up for making mistakes. Is one of the biggest things that they hang on to. And they verbally or mentally or emotionally internalize all of this junk. And it's like, what can you do about this? You're flawed. You're a human being. You're going to make mistakes. But if you use them as lessons, they become blessings in your life. If you want to beat yourself up, it's going to tear you down to where you can't even respond to yourself. But if you see that, you know what, okay, I made a mistake. This isn't a life sentence. This is actually, okay, an enlightenment to what not to do next.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Chris, it's been so great talking with you. Let's wrap up with what's the best way that people can reach out, connect with you, and learn a little bit about more about what you do and maybe share their story with you.
I send everybody, it's my one site, all catches everything. It's Chris, F as in Ferguson, 360.com.
Excellent. So I will make sure that is in the show notes, and I encourage anyone listening to reach out and connect with Chris. If anything that we have talked about today has resonated with you, I know that she'll be a wonderful help for you. Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
Mike, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.